We are now less than a week away from the start of a new school year. Many thought this would be a more normal year for students, but we're still in the middle of a surge in new COVID cases and hospitalizations here in Arkansas, and things are starting to look a lot like they did last August, except kids are even more affected now than they were then. Another record number of Arkansans are in the hospital battling COVID. Here's a look at those numbers, which is now over 1,400 people hospitalized. That is 59 more than the beginning of the week, and 300 of them are on ventilators right now. As for our deaths, 24 more people in the state have died from COVID-19. Meanwhile, Tuesday made 5 days in the last week that we've seen at least 2,500 new cases, and right now there are more than 23,000 active COVID cases in the state, 500 more than Monday. As COVID cases rise, the number of available ICU beds continues to fluctuate. Just 12 intensive care unit beds were open and available as of the last report, and that was yesterday afternoon. That is just 1% of all ICU space in the entire state of Arkansas. Governor Hutchinson says officials are working on clearing up space to get people in, but hospitals like UAMS are already at capacity and making spaces what they've already been doing. Now they're running low on ICU nurses, and it takes a special person to fill that role.
We can't expect a nurse who's not trained to be an intensive care nurse to provide the same care that ICU nurse would.
Dr. Mina says we now know what works when it comes to beating the virus, and we need to stick to those things. They include getting the vaccine, wearing a mask, and social distancing. And as we get closer and closer to the new school year, Arkansas school boards are having to make last-minute decisions on mask rules. That comes after a judge last week cleared the way for districts to make their own regulations. So here's a look at some of what has happened already. The Pulaski County Special School District, Conway, Bryant, Russellville, and the Hot Springs School District have all decided that they will require face masks. Face coverings will be optional in the Bauxite and the Benton school districts. While they did not implement a mask mandate, Benton School Board did approve the district to buy air purifiers for every classroom in the district.
We always have the health and safety of our students as a top priority. We want to see our kids safe. We want to see our staff safe. And we feel this decision will ensure that we do that.
The North Little Rock School Board will meet tonight at 5:30 to discuss and vote on the issue. The Little Rock District will meet tomorrow night. You can find an updated list of the schools that have made decisions about masks right now on thv-at-noon.com. We have made it part of our mission during this pandemic to bring you the real stories behind these numbers, the faces of COVID-19. THV11's Ashley Godwin shares one Arkansas woman's story of survival and loss and the choices she would have made differently if she knew what she knows today.
That is my senior year, which would have been, and that we look like just children.
Married for 47 years, Susan and Jerry Reed spent most of their adult life in Sheridan and expected to live many more years there together. But this year changed everything. After COVID hit, Susan scheduled vaccination appointments twice, but work got in the way and she canceled them.
I should have made it a more priority in looking back at hindsight, because I never really thought that COVID would have a special message for me, but obviously it did.
6 weeks later, they both tested positive for the virus. Doctors prescribed them medication, but their symptoms only got worse, leaving in ambulances to the hospital only 15 minutes apart from each other.
I think he was scared. I think he was afraid. We didn't know when we left, you know. That would be the last time.
The last time she saw him in person. Even though only rooms apart in the hospital, they were limited to only phone calls.
Jerry said to me, and he realized this, he said, "Can you believe how sick we are?" This was in a FaceTime conversation. I said, "I know."
Susan was able to go home 8 days later, but her husband never left his bed. He died on the ventilator.
He had a great personality. He has friends that were lifelong. I mean, I don't think I ever met anybody that didn't like him. And he was funny. He had a really wicked sense of humor.
Now Susan cherishes her husband's memories through pictures.
And I thought, look how cool he was.
Honoring the amazing man she lost too soon. Looking back, she knows she would have made one choice differently, getting the vaccine.
If I had had the hindsight, man, I would have scheduled it the very next day, or I would have gone somewhere and gotten it, because
I do believe that if he had had the vaccine, he would still be here. I believe that.
A heartbreaking story from THV 11's Ashley Godwin reporting there. Susan's doctors recommend she wait a couple of months before getting the vaccine. She plans to get the shot as soon as she can next month. Hours after passing a major infrastructure bill with bipartisan support, the Senate took another big step to push through President Biden's agenda. It narrowly approved a $3.5 trillion blueprint for family, health, and environmental programs. Much of it would be paid for with higher taxes on wealthy Americans and corporations. Chris Van Cleve has more from Capitol Hill.
The yeas are 50, the nays are 49. And the concurrent resolution as amended is agreed to.
This morning, the Senate approved a $3.5 trillion budget resolution, setting the framework for a massive budget bill loaded with progressive social programs, including child and senior care, and money to combat climate change. The 50-49 party line vote came after an overnight vote-a-rama on a lengthy series of non-binding amendments.
This amendment is just plain anti-pickup truck. Let's start there.
Opposing my amendment is a vote in support of defunding the police.
Some senators expressed exasperation at the procedure.
So let all of us, 100 people, not walk, but sashay down there and vote for this amendment.
But earlier Tuesday, bipartisanship briefly reigned as the Senate overwhelmingly passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill.
On this vote, the yeas are 69.
19 GOP senators joined Democrats in voting to rebuild the nation's highways, bridges, public transit, and expand access to broadband.
After years and years of infrastructure week, we're on the cusp of an infrastructure decade that I truly believe will transform America.
Tennessee's Bill Hagerty voted no.
They call the infrastructure bipartisan, but
I think what it reveals is the strategy deployed by the majority leader. He wanted to put the patina of bipartisanship on this initial package. He wanted to create a series of actions, real momentum toward this $3.5 trillion spending spree that's going to be a debt bomb for America.
The infrastructure measure heads to the House, but Speaker Nancy Pelosi won't allow a vote until the Senate passes that $3.5 trillion budget bill.
The total vision is about not only building physical infrastructure, but building human infrastructure.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will now call the House back from recess about a month early to take up their version of the budget resolution and possibly voting rights. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Washington.